But we have our help center where the majority of this is documented. So there's a lot of faculty guides, setup guides within that help resource page. So Rudy will go ahead and drop that link, the URL to the help center in our chat in a little bit. So just in case you need to access some of these write-ups and articles and KBs, those will be in there. So within the collection of applications here in the App Store, we have access to a collection of desktops and applications. And so from a faculty perspective, I'll talk a little bit about what we see here in the sidebar as we go along. So I have access to the users section, some of the feature settings, our calendar, and then the analytics section within my faculty perspective here. So you can see that it says here at the top right that I'm logged in as a faculty account and that I can exit that impersonation. So what that means is that my faculty account has the ability to impersonate my students. And that's a feature that can be enabled or disabled by your sysadmin or your IT administrator within your organization. And the benefits of being able to impersonate users are quite similar to that of the feature that you have access to in LMS, where in Canvas or Blackboard, you're able to impersonate students. The idea of impersonation is quite the same here in the sense that if I'm a faculty who needs to give some extra help to a student, or maybe I need to log into their desktop to grade their project, or something along those lines, that feature is available as long as it's toggled and enabled by the sysadmin. Feature settings, we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but the short summary of that is, if I'm teaching a class that I don't want my students to be able to share their screens with other students or be able to chat in what we call our messenger and so forth, or maybe I want students not have the ability to upload or download documents within that class. Those are the features that I could enable for or disable for the class that I'm teaching. And we'll talk a little bit about the analytics in just a second. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the Windows desktop here. Okay, and so now I've got this desktop pulled up and I've got access to some features. So let me talk a little bit about file handling and some of the features that we have here in what we call the Apporto toolbar. As you can see, I've got 2 additional new icons as my faculty account here that give me the opportunity to launch the virtual classroom and the presenter mode. And I'll show you guys what that looks like in just a moment. So first and foremost, the first section here, we've got the full screen toggle. And really what this is going to do is it's going to stretch the desktop in full screen mode. If I show you the rest of my screen here, if you can see at the bottom, I've got my actual toolbar, my taskbar from Windows here at the bottom. And so that is going to, clicking this is going to expand this some more and then put me in a true full screen mode where pixel for pixel, my virtual environment should take full control over my physical desktop here. And what this is also enabling is the ability to send additional keyboard commands that you might not be able to send outside of full screen mode. And what I mean by that is that if I hit the Windows key here, or if I hit Windows tab and things like that, I'm able to, fully extend my keyboard and all of those hotkeys and shortcuts that might pertain to specific applications that might be running in this environment. For example, I know SolidWorks and maybe some of the Adobe applications have specific hotkeys that, extend the usage and extend the feature set of those applications. And if you want to be able to capture some of those really technical and multi-key shortcuts, full screen mode is the best way to do that. I'm going to go ahead and exit full screen mode now. Okay, so moving along to the rest of the toolbar, some of these are pretty self-explanatory, but I'll kind of fly through them really quickly. File upload, file download. This is just to be able to move files between my physical machine and into or from the virtual environment. And so to do that, you can click the upload button. That's going to pull up the File Explorer native to your operating system. In this case, I'm using Windows. And you can navigate to a file there and then, just kind of select it and upload it. The location it's going to upload that file to is going to go directly to the backend virtual desktop here. Another way to do this is what we call click and drop or drag and drop. So you could take a, let me create a quick file on my side here. So you could take a file from your physical desktop and you can drag it into the virtual desktop. So here I've got this text document. I'm going to drag it into the virtual desktop and that'll go ahead and upload it to my desktop here. You can see that kind of dragged it and dropped it there on the desktop. So that's kind of one of the ways that you can move files into the virtual environment. If you need to move files out of the virtual environment, then you have a few options. One of those options is to click the download button. That's going to kind of show you this File Explorer view. By default, it's going to think that you're trying to work with the desktop, but if you want to get to your documents or your downloads folder, you can just click on the Apporto button here and navigate to the respective folder that you need to go to.
Hey Max, are you able to do folders, drag and drop folders?
No, not yet. Not yet, but you could select multiple files and that'll upload those together. So to download that file, I'll click download, and that's just going to download that file directly to the downloads folder on my physical computer or the downloads folder that your browser is pointing to. Okay, so that's just moving files back and forth between the two environments. Let me talk a little bit about Cloud Mounter because that's probably a more useful, more featured way of doing this. But ultimately, Cloud Mounter is an application, an in-house built app that allows you to mount any one of these cloud drives or all four. And if your organization, your university has configured file servers or home drives and things like that, those could also be connected to the virtual environment. So in this case, I can mount the Google Drive that I have with my account. By default, this checkbox will be checked, and this is to reconnect that cloud drive every time you log back in. So if I don't check this, this is going to mount this Google Drive that I have just the one time. And when I log back in the next time, it will not reconnect. But if this is checked, it'll remount that virtual cloud drive. And I'll show you guys what that looks like in a second. So I'll go ahead and start logging in with my G Drive credentials here. Go ahead and approve my login. Okay, great. Give that permission. And in a second, this will go ahead and create, I believe, a G drive and open up that folder and showing all the contents of that cloud drive. And from there, you'll be able to work with the files that you have. One of the warnings that will show up here in a second is recommending that when working with large project files or data sets, that you take that data set from your cloud drive, copy it down to the local desktop, whether it's desktop folder or documents folder or so forth. And from there, working with that application that's respective to that data set. Now I have a bunch of stuff in there, so this is going to take a second to load up. And you could do the same thing with OneDrive, Box, and Dropbox. And each customer has access to this Cloud Mounter. And from there, if you guys have any need or request to kind of remove some of those cloud drives, we could do that. So it is a customizable application. Okay, and there's my G drive, and that'll start populating some of my files. Probably should have used a smaller account there. Okay, so while that's building that, you can see there's an existing connection there. But you get the idea. So now I have access to this cloud drive, and each university usually has a sponsored cloud drive provider, whether it's OneDrive or Google Drive. And so this is a good way to educate your students on file handling and letting them know that you can access your cloud drives. You could use the Apporto Cloud Mounter, and at the same time, the same could be done for just using the virtual browser as well. So you could also just go to drive.google.com or whatever, OneDrive.com and so forth, and log into your cloud drive as you normally would on your physical machine. And now you have access to your homework, your files, your project files, and so forth within the virtual environment. And so that's another good way that you could move files back and forth. Okay, let me talk a little bit about file recovery and file handling in general, because I think that this is something that we need to update on our Help Center. So one thing that we have, and I believe I have this in my student environment, which I'll show you in a moment. But one feature that we have that's really neat is what we call shadow copies. You can see my G drive there now. So if we go to, let's say we go to documents, I have an Apporto folder here. Or perhaps let's say that I have created certain files in my desktop or on my desktop or certain folders, and I might have deleted some by accident. Now, if I select this file here, this text document, and then just hit the delete key, that's going to go to the recycle bin, just like it normally would on most machines. Now, if I empty that, that'll delete that. Of course, if I open that, I can restore those files. But sometimes people do delete things by accident. And so one feature that you have, or that everyone has access to, is what's called shadow copies. So if I right click on desktop here and click on properties, I can click on previous versions. And here, since this is a newly created account, but here would be a list of hourly time points or hourly backups of this version of the desktop, or any folder really. So if I go to documents and right click on that and then go on properties and click on previous versions, it would be the same idea here, that I would see hourly time points and hourly snapshots of that version of that folder. And so if I created a file, let's say yesterday, and maybe I deleted it by accident today, or perhaps I modified a file and overwritten it to a state that I'm not comfortable with, but I didn't create a restore point here, or I didn't make a backup copy, I could go in and select that parent folder in this list and then open it and then navigate to the file that I want to bring back, or whichever version, and then just kind of drag and drop it, or I can restore the entire folder. And so this is a really useful tool for file recovery. It happens a lot that students might delete something or overwrite something. And so in most cases, they should have access to a good, healthy backup of that version of the file. Okay, so this is called shadow copies. It's really useful. Okay, let's see. Any questions so far?
How long are the shadow copies available for?
Great question. So typically there should be about a 7-day period, about 5 to 7 days hourly backups.
Okay, I also wanted to ask, are we gonna have access to the recording?
Yes. Yeah. Once this meeting is completed, we'll go ahead and send out a follow-up email with the recording.
Hey, Max. Just one question I have is with Google Drive. I seem to notice when we've tested it out or tried it in the past or recommended it to faculty and they connect to it, there's a delay, especially if they have a lot of files in Google Drive. I was wondering if there's a workaround for that, or will it be addressed in terms of the performance of connecting to a cloud drive with a lot of files and folders?
Is the delay in the initial connection, or just in general moving files back and forth? Or
Yeah, so what I typically have done is I've told them, don't work off Google Drive when you mounted it. Copy the files locally on the desktop and work on it from there. But the performance typically suffers if you try to run or even just Word documents, for example, or Excel files, if you try to double click on it from Google Drive.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, this is something that changes because the way that Cloud Mountain works is it's using each cloud provided API. So in this case, we're using Google's API, and what they tend to do is when a third-party application like this connects to the service, they tend to scan everything before they release the file. And so that's kind of what's going on in the back end is they scan it and make sure that it's not malicious, and then they complete the request into Cloud Mountain saying, you can take the rest of this file. And so that's typically the explanation for that delay, but it's partially why we recommend taking that data set and making a copy of it, or just copying it to the desktop, and then from there working on it, and then copying it back when you're done. It's typically, especially if the data set is something that's like a large file. So yeah, we do have, we will be having a development team kind of update and try to improve the performance of Cloud Mountain overall. So that's something that we'll be addressing.
Yeah, I guess, no, I mean, the purpose of it to get your files onto the Apporto desktop, it works perfectly. But I think that our users were a Google environment, and they're used to working off their Google Drive stream. So when they double click on files, it works for them on their local desktop. And then I think they're assuming it's going to work the same way on Apporto. So once we tell them to move it over, it works. It's just it's kind of confuses users, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah, so we're always looking to improve, things like this, and I think file stream is kind of, it's really similar to OneDrive, where you can cache the copy of the file locally and kind of work on it, and the way that they integrate that into the file explorer in Windows, kind of makes it seem like it's native. So yeah, that's something that we're looking at right now, is to try to get it closer to more of a native experience when it comes to the Google Drive and OneDrives, things like that with Cloud Mountain.
Or I would even say maybe like advertise it differently. It's meant to transfer files to your Apporto session as opposed to working from it. Something along those lines, I guess.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. I think, yeah, I think I agree with that, that we can try to improve that experience a little bit. Okay, guys, so let me talk a little bit about the snapshots here and screen sharing, and then the messenger, and then we'll kind of go into the virtual classroom and the benefits there. So snapshots are basically a restore point that you can create. Each user is allowed up to 2 restore points, and ultimately what these restore points are doing is creating a full picture of all of your files, all of your folders, essentially all your file system related items. It's creating a restore point. And so what we're doing here is you're going to create a restore point or it would be a good idea to let your students know about the feature if they're going to be working on a large project where they have, let's say, 5 or 10 files that are all involved within an assignment that they're working on. And so restore points are useful in that, if you're going to be working on a file or a lot of files, I should say, and if you know that you're going to be modifying them as you go, maybe you feel like you've gone too far, creating a restore point and then having access to that restore point after the fact kind of gives you the ability to bring those files back to the condition that you started working with them in. So the idea behind is, essentially create a backup of all the files that you have. So let's say if you've created multiple folders and things like that, and there's many files involved, it's a good idea to create a restore point. If you feel like you've gone too far, you can click the button again. You'll see that restore point that you've created selected from a list and then be able to restore back. So it's a useful tool. I think it's important in the sense that, if you have your shadow copies like I showed previously, that only gets you, so far, but if you want to be able to just kind of refresh back to a certain point where you've created a restore point, it's useful to have that. All right, so screen sharing is somewhat self-explanatory here. Ultimately, what this is all about is you're going to be sending a link to somebody, whether it's another peer or somebody outside or whatever the case is, or to the faculty. The idea is to share a screen with somebody. And so the first link, if I click copy link and then send this to someone, whoever clicks that link will be able to see in mirror mode exactly what I'm doing with my screen share. And so as I manipulate items on my screen, the receiving party will see those manipulations. They'll see exactly what I'm doing. View and draw. This creates a link that basically takes a screenshot. So essentially, I create a screenshot of my current desktop. So let's say I'm working on a visual project or something within SolidWorks or AutoCAD or Photoshop. It's essentially taking a screenshot of that image, sending it to another party, and then that party can annotate on that screen, and we can see those annotations in real time. And then full control, whoever receives this link gets full control over my desktop. And so in this case, it could be sent to multiple people. So multiple people can interact with the same desktop. And for security reasons, just if anyone's curious, these links do expire. And so if I click copy and then send that out and somebody clicks them, they'll be able to manipulate or work with my screen. But if I stop the share, those URLs are no longer valid, or if I log out as a student or as a faculty, those URLs are also not valid. So they're only valid for as long as this, the user is active. If they have, their session running, then those are valid, or until they click stop share. And so these are all features at the top here that could be enabled or disabled. As I kind of mentioned before about the feature settings, these are all features that could be enabled or disabled per class or per group. And so, if faculty wanted to have access to the screen, if they have permissions, in this case, my faculty account here is only allowed to teach Math 101. So as faculty here, I can go ahead and disable these features or enable these features for my class. Dan asks a great question. So each user by default has 10 gigabytes in their persistent profile, unless defined by the class. And so let's say, for example, Math 101 needs to work with a larger data set. We can increase that for up to 25 or 30 gigabytes per user. So in most cases, that should be enough. And if more storage is required, then that could be kind of discussed with the IT admin or the admin of the account here.
Okay, sorry. Just a quick question. For the snapshots, is there any feature like when you make edits on the one that you currently just took a snapshot on, where like there would be updates? Let's say you make edits rather. Is there a place that can auto save the changes that you make, or you have to manually keep taking a snapshot until you're done with whatever you're doing?
So you can create up to 2 snapshots, but all they're really capturing is your file system. So for example, let's say I have 30 files in here on my desktop, so documents and so forth, and then maybe I also have, in addition to the documents on the desktop folder, let's say in the documents I have additional folders or additional files. So what the snapshot is really doing is just capturing all of those files that you have essentially in your persistent user profile, and it's making a copy of them and setting that aside until if you want to restore it back. And so there's no update tracking type of feature for that. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
So yeah, really it's just a restore point to your files. It's like taking a full backup of your downloads, desktop, and documents folder all in one snapshot. So that's really what it's kind of doing.
Yeah, it's mostly meant for if a student or faculty is working on a large project that involves multiple files. You know, if they're working on a 3D model that within that model has, you know, 4 or 5 different sets of files that are configured when you're working on that project. So you might want to, instead of just copying that single file, when you create a snapshot, you'll have, you know, all those files stored. You know, it'll let you revert your entire project.
Now, most application states are saved, and maybe that can also help answer the question a little bit. So for example, if you modify SolidWorks, you know, a lot of that is kind of in your redirected profile area. And so we redirect some of the application data settings depending on which application it is. So if you modify things within, you know, if you customize an application, in most cases, it should persist those settings. And so snapshots don't really fully pertain to that, but they do include app settings as well. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and let's take a look at the virtual classroom, feature. So on the right-hand side, I've got a app store for the same demo environment. So these are all configured the same way as any production instance. The right-hand side, I'm logged in as a student, and the left-hand side, I am a faculty member. So I'll go ahead and actually let me back up a little bit. Let me show you that. As faculty, I have access to teach the Math 101 environment or the Math 101 class, specifically using this Windows desktop. And then the right-hand side is the student account, which is a member of the same class and also has access to the Windows desktop. So I'll go ahead and launch my faculty environment on the left, and I'll launch my student environment on the right. And so you could see at the top here on the left-hand side, as faculty, I have access to the virtual classroom and also the presenter mode. And then the student side just, you know, has the Windows desktop as expected. I've got this test folder here that I created earlier, a bunch of files in there. And we've also got this, let's see, we've got this chat messenger here. And so this student is a member of a bunch of classes. In particular, we're going to be looking at Math 101. And so my student here can see that I have a faculty account who's logged in. Looks like there's another student, Rudy's logged in as well, and so forth. And so we can see the class roster. We can see who's online, who's not. As a student or as faculty, I'm able to put myself on do not disturb mode and so forth, so I can kind of show folks if I'm, you know, if I want to be bothered or not. So from here, we have a number of features that we could look at. For one, if I want to talk to a student directly, I can do that. And so I can initiate a chat conversation with a student or maybe another faculty. And from within that one-on-one relationship, I could do a number of things. I can call Rudy here using my microphone. You don't have to pick it up, Rudy, but so I can establish a one-on-one voice conversation. I can do a screen share or request a screen share with that student. And from there, we could also, you know, as faculty, I can initiate a remote session, or as a student, I can contact another student and so forth. But let's say I'm a student, I'm having trouble with some of my homework or some of my projects. I can reach out to the faculty if they're online. I can share my screen with them. I can allow them to remotely control my screen as well. So this is a one-on-one relationship here. This is outside of the virtual classroom feature set. So I'll just go ahead and show you what that looks like. So student in the right-hand side reaches out to faculty, requests to you know, share their screen with them. The faculty gets that request here. We can accept that. And now you can see that the faculty is seeing what's happening on the student screen. We could see each other's cursors. Now, if I move my cursor to the left-hand side, the student is seeing that the faculty's cursor. So you can imagine that if there's two cursors here, everyone knows who's who. So it's not confusing which mouse pointer is which. And I'm able to manipulate, the screens that way in a direct one-on-one relationship here. So this is a good, helpful tool to be able to share the screen with the faculty and get some help with whatever project that they're working on. And then to stop the share, we could just click here. And of course, the faculty can close that tab that they were looking at earlier. So that's the one way that faculty and students can interact through the chat messenger. Now, with the virtual classroom feature here, I'll show you guys what that looks like. So clicking that button ultimately gives you access to whichever classrooms or classes you're able to teach. So in this case, my faculty user here is only able to teach Math 101, but you can imagine if I had other classes in the list, I would get a pop-up and that would give me the opportunity to select whichever class I want to look at that point in time. I could also look at the attendance here, so I could see which class. In this case, I have a class full of students and I can see who are present and who are not. So I get that list here. And so from here, I'm able to see little thumbnails of my students. Now on this screen, if I was to full screen this or maximize this window, I'd be able to see about 9 thumbnails or 9 student screens per page. Now, if this classroom was full, additional pages would be created here at the bottom. And I'll show you guys what that, if some of you are wondering, well, what happens if you do have a full class? And, let's say that a student, maybe Fruity raises his hand or I raise my hand. What we see here in the virtual classroom view is that the thumbnails are now outlined with a red color. And so I can see who's got their hand raised and I can acknowledge those hand raises by clicking on the little handprints here. And you can see that the student gets a notification when a faculty has acknowledged a hand raise. And this is really useful because now we know that, okay, the faculty saw my hand raise, they've logged that I've got some kind of interest or I need some help. And if there were more pages here at the bottom, the corresponding page number would blink. And also you would get a notification from your operating system or from your browser, letting you know that somebody's raised their hand, and then you get a notification by this pulsing number here at the bottom. And so you're able to see which page, wherever that student is, you could see which page number is letting you know that there's somebody who needs help. Now, the updating of the thumbnails is about 4 to 10 seconds here. So you could see it's a little sluggish in the sense that if I manipulate my screen as a student, we see that updated here relatively quickly, but there is a little bit of a delay. Now, what I could do is if I wanted to take a deeper look, a little bit more real time into what the student is up to, what they're doing, I can click on their thumbnail here. And now I'm able to see a more real-time experience of what's going on. So in this case, we can see in real time that the student is manipulating some kind of file or they're working on a project. So we can really see very quickly what they're up to. And so in this case, I clicked on that student screen. I'm able to see exactly what they're doing, what they're working on. Clearly, they're recreating Star Wars. If I wanted to go in and, maybe I can see that the student is not doing something correctly, I can go ahead as faculty, request remote control, and the student here gets a pop-up asking them for permission to allow or disallow this screen share. So if the student clicks accept, then it's kind of back to what I was showing you through the messenger, but in this case, this is all done through the virtual classroom. And now, as faculty, I have full control over the students' virtual desktop here, and I can help them, get through the project. I can type, I can interact with their environment as if I was right there in a physical classroom, kind of leaning over their shoulder and helping them out with the mouse and keyboard and telling them what to do. And then to escape or to get out of this remote control, I just click the little X at the top right there, and we're back to normal. Student is, continuing to do their work. I'm back in the virtual classroom view. I still have access to my chat messenger here. It looks like Rudy sent me a message. He needs some help. He wants to know why the Cubs are not doing so well this season. Obviously, he's not doing what they're supposed to be doing and so forth. But you get the idea that there's this interaction between a student and faculty within a physical classroom that we're trying to duplicate here in a virtual environment. And this has been largely helpful for faculty who had to adapt to this new way of learning and teaching, due to COVID and things like that. So really neat tool here. This has been positively received since we've deployed it a couple years ago, and we're starting to see a lot more adoption here with this feature. Now we have another feature where we can present our screen to the students, and that's what this little icon here is. It's presenter mode. So let me show you what that looks like. Let me open up some. Let me also look at R2D2 on my faculty side here. So let's go ahead and minimize that. As a student, let's click on presenter mode. And now as faculty, I can present to a class. In this case, I have only one class that I'm teaching. So if I wanted to broadcast my voice during my presentation to the students, I could just enable this checkbox that will enable the microphone. In this case, I won't do that. So I'll hit share screen. And what's going to happen on the student side is the students will get a pop-up asking them, how would you like to view this presentation that the faculty is trying to share? And the two options are view it in page, and I'll show you in a second what that looks like, or in a new tab. Now, the new tab feature is mostly making sense if a student has two monitors, they can click on new tab, but it'll open up a secondary tab in their browser. They could take that tab, drag it over to their secondary monitor, full screen it, and now they've got this nice side-by-side view of what they're doing versus what the faculty is presenting. Now, if you don't have a secondary monitor, you can click on in page, and in page kind of brings back the old school picture-in-picture feature that TVs used to have. Maybe they still do have. And now what's neat about this is that, as faculty, I can manipulate my screen, show the students what they need to be working on, what they need to be doing. And now they're seeing in real time what to do and how to follow along. Now they can move this screen around. They can resize it. They can shrink it. They can maximize it. They can minimize it here if they want to put it out of the way for a moment, and it shows up down here at the bottom right. If they want to bring that back, they can do so. If they accidentally close the presentation, now they can go ahead and reopen it by clicking that same button at the top of the Apporto toolbar. And here again, they're prompted with that method of viewing that screen if they want to view it in page or in a separate tab, so they could do that. So this is a really neat way to really show your students what to do and have them follow along. And so, the idea here is just it's not really, to prevent faculty from having to use things like Zoom or, GoToMeeting or Google Meet or something like that. It's really just about giving you the ability and the tools to do something that you want to do for your class, for your students, using a single platform instead of having you launching multiple applications, logging into different areas and things like that. And so this is really just about centralizing the experience and giving you a single platform to work with. Any questions about virtual classroom or presenter mode?
Adam, as long as the users are part of the same group, they can message each other.
Gotcha, thanks.
No worries.
Okay, let me talk a little bit about, let's look at the LMS integration. And so just for anyone who doesn't know, we support learning management system integrations, and those supported platforms are Canvas, Blackboard, D2L or Desire to Learn, Sakai, Moodle, and Schoology. Those are, I think, the 6 platforms so far that we support, and the majority of those are able to do what I'm going to show you here. So in this Canvas instance, I'm logged in as a student, and I can see my dashboard. I'm enrolled in one class, some kind of engineering class, and here I have access to either the App Store or the Windows desktop. And so the App Store brings me to this view, right? So we can show students the App Store view directly from Canvas. And so what's nice about the Canvas integration is that each the authentication for users is handled at the Canvas level. So when I click on App Store, that's going to go ahead and open up this screen here. I can click on that. That's going to open up a separate tab, and it's going to log me in as a student directly into the App Store view. And so that authentication was already handled and taken care of through the Canvas login that I had earlier. Now, the second way, and I'll wait for that to load. I think we haven't logged into this account for a while, so it's provisioning right now. And so, you know, the nice thing about that is that if you want the App Store to be shown to your students for a specific course module or a course shell, you know, that's one way to get them in there. And the nice thing about that is that the admin at the university can control which applications those students have access to, you know, based on their membership. So in this case, this is the stuff I have access to. Now, another neat feature is that if I go back to my dashboard, click on my class, let's say that you want to link a desktop or an application directly to the course, bypassing the App Store, and you can do that by doing this. So what this is going to do is now I've assigned a virtual desktop directly to the course. And same idea, you click on that button there, and that's going to log you in directly into a Windows desktop or a Linux desktop or a virtual Mac, or, you know, launch Word, or, you know, SolidWorks and so forth. And so the idea is that now you can create this direct, what we call deep link, from the LMS system to a virtual environment specifically tied to a course or something along those lines. And so that's the idea behind what's handled there. Now, from the admin side, for those of you who are sysadmins and you're maintaining these Apporto environments for your schools, the relationship between how applications or desktops are published to and from Apporto into Canvas and things like that, the application publishing and the roles for faculty, those are all handled automatically. And what's really nice about the LMS integration is that there's a lot of automation that happens or takes place there. And so you could see that when I launched this Windows desktop, it took me right in. And so I didn't have to log in as a student, right? I didn't have to authenticate again or anything like that. It logged me in as Jake. I'm in the biology class and so forth. And so all of those publications, all of those relationships and backend, you know, systems that you have to set up manually are handled automatically through the LMS integration. And what's nice here also is that as a student, I'm able to now upload my assignment that I had assigned to me from Canvas directly from the virtual desktop to my Canvas assignment repository for my faculty to be able to review. And so when a faculty creates an assignment for a course shell, let's say in Canvas or Blackboard and so forth, that assignment is tied into the virtual desktop here. And so by clicking that button, I can select which homework assignment in particular I want to upload to, select it, and then it's going to say, okay, which file did you want to upload to that Canvas or, you know, LMS assignment repository for your class. And once I've finished working with that file or that project file, I select it here, hit submit, and that's going to take that file and push it directly to the course assignment for the faculty to review. And so now the faculty gets a notification from Canvas that so-and-so submitted their assignment and so forth. And so it's a nice way to kind of automate, that interaction of assignment submission between the faculty and the student through the virtual desktop. Now, of course, the student can always go to the virtual desktop. From within the virtual desktop, they can go to Instructure or whatever.com and log into their Canvas instance here using the virtual browser, and then manually upload the file and things like that. Or they could download the file from the virtual desktop to their physical computer, but it's really cumbersome when you already have the ability to submit the assignment directly through the integration here. So really useful tool. Really takes a lot of the it's just more automation and makes it more convenient.
Hey, Max, I was just wondering, did we mention the class or course shared folder that can be created?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. We did not, but let me do that now. So let me go back here to my faculty view, and let's look at the shared folders here. So what we have here is a shared folder that can be created for a specific class. So in this case, I'm logged in as faculty and I'm teaching Math 101. And under this shared folder icon here on the desktop, which everyone has access to, by the way. So let me go ahead and show you that. So on the right-hand side, I'm a student and I'm in Math 101. And here I am, I have access to this Math 101 folder. And as faculty, I have access to this Math 101 folder. And so the idea behind creating a shared class folder is that everyone who's taking Math 101 now has access to this shared file repository or this shared folder here, where the faculty can, drop a assignment here. You can upload a syllabus. You can upload, project files that you want your students to work on and so forth. You can create, subfolders within this environment. Oops. So you can, you can add things in here for your students to see and access. And so what you can do with this is essentially provide a central location for your students to work on files and such. And so it's a nice way to kind of place things in there instead of giving them like a shared cloud drive link or whatever the case may be. But you can imagine that if you're starting to teach a new class, they can have access to a syllabus and such. What's nice about this is that we can configure it such that the faculty has full control over this folder. They can modify it, create subfolders like it did here, upload files and such, and students can be configured to only have read and execute access, meaning that they can't create folders and files here, but they can copy the file out that they need to work on and so forth. And stuff like that. So that's kind of the idea behind the shared folders, is that you're now providing a file or folder repository for the students to kind of see and things like that. And so really neat tool. Again, it's one of those things that you can create for your students and for your class. And so if I'm a student who's taking Biology 101, then I will not see this shared folder. And maybe if the admin or faculty allowed the shared folder feature to be created for Biology 101, then I would see both of my shared folders there.
Just a quick question. So when a new file is added, when faculty adds a new file to, let's say Math 101, or they make an update, is there going to be a notification for the students to know that an update has been made, or does the faculty member always have to tell the students that, oh, I made changes or I added some documents? Is there like an automatic messenger or alert that tells the student that the faculty has updated the file?
No, that's not available right now, but that's actually a really great idea. I think that's a good feature for us to take a look at. It would actually be pretty neat to be able to do that. So because this is recorded and I've got folks on my side here who are listening, I think we'll note that and we'll try to see if we can put that on a roadmap. I think that's a pretty good idea actually for the class. Otherwise, yeah, you would have to manually, announce it somehow or let them know that you know, the shared Math 101 folder had been modified, or we've added a file or something along those lines. But we do have a lot of customers, a lot of universities and schools who are, who are using this type of environment, and they're using this shared folder for their projects. And so oftentimes what we see is faculty will place syllabus, and they'll place project files there, and they'll tell their students, welcome to the class, click on this, you've got your syllabus there, and then you've got the project files for each section as we go along, copy these and then work on them and so forth. And so yeah, it's a good tool, but yeah, there's no notifications on changes or state changes for those folders. Okay, guys, is there anything else, any other questions that anybody might have that I can cover? And then from, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, so there was a time when you were presenting and faculty had access to the student screen. I was able to work 100%. So at that point in time, will the students also still have like remote control of the system at that time, or it would just be fully faculty, and when faculty is done, the student would have access to continue working on it? So how does it work? Can faculty and student work at the same time?
During a screen share, like a one-on-one screen share, or from the virtual classroom?
I think the one-on-one screen share where they have like the remote control.
Oh, sure thing. Yeah. So yeah, let's set that up really fast. Yeah, great question. So I've got my student here. So the quick answer to your question is the student can continue to work. So once the screen share ends, nobody loses their session, right? So the faculty will still have access to their virtual desktop that they were using, and the student will continue to be able to use their virtual desktop. So once the screen share stops, they still have, the student still has full control over their environment. Does that kind of does that answer your question?
Yes, yes.
So I could set that up really quickly here. Yeah, so now you could see faculty is controlling the student screen. So the screen for the student hasn't changed, right? They're sharing their screen. Now if the faculty logs out or something along those lines, then the screen share is going to stop. And so that's, the student can still maintain, full control over their environment.
Well, okay, just to clarify, and what I was asking was, just like faculty is working on it right now, will the students' cursor also be able to move and like do other things? Or like, would they be like, if the faculty is working, can the student's cursor move just in case the student is trying to like point out to a file, a document, a part to the faculty?
Yeah. So that's one thing I can't simulate right now because I'm on the same computer.
Okay.
But actually, for example, if,
yeah, actually take over mine, Max.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Yeah.
So
log into mine.
Let's go ahead and close this one. Yeah, let me show you that. That's a good question. So faculty here, and are you online, Rudy?
Yep.
Yeah, so we're looking at Rudy's screen right now, and I'll go ahead and request remote control. And once he approves that, I should have full control over his screen. And so you could see as faculty, I guess what you can't see is what he's seeing on his screen, but ultimately here I am, I'm looking at this text document, but Rudy is, moving the mouse and showing me. So I could see his cursor moving around, even though I have my cursor here. And so yeah, the students are able to move the cursor around and show folks show the faculty what they're trying to look at.
All right, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. If there's anything else that you need to see or need to know, feel free to contact us. You could just email us directly, or you can email the whole team and then someone will get back to you. So our direct email address for the entire team here at Apporto is success@apporto.com. That contacts me, Rudy, and some other folks, and then also support as well. So that gives visibility to everybody. So if whether I'll get back to you or Rudy or someone else, but someone will always get back to you no matter what. If there's anything else that you'd like to see covered on the next session, definitely let us know. So we'll go ahead and stop the recording here.